So, students of BT third sem, today I am going to discuss with you about the human karyotyping and the chromosome banding. That is normally it is a part of human karyotyping process, and its uses normally I will discuss today. So let's get started now. So, about the human karyotyping, what does human karyotyping means? Normally, if I say about human karyotyping, human karyotyping is a process of pairing and ordering of all the chromosomes of an organism. So, karyotyping is simply a process of pairing and ordering of all the chromosomes of an organism, thus providing a genome wide, just like a snapshot of an individual's chromosomes. Okay, and this type of karyotypes are prepared by using standard staining procedures. Different type of stains are employed, like your Gimsa stain. It is the most popular stain which is used for chromosome banding and for karyotype analysis. Then another stain is there which is known as quinacrine. Quinacrine. It is also known as quinacrine mustard. It is an alkylating agent which will add alkyl groups to certain bases of our DNA, and it is a fluorescent dye. Quinacrine is a fluorescent dye. It will emit light where this quinacrine will attach with the DNA bases within the chromosome, and it can be viewed through a fluorescence microscope, which is a special type of microscope. Then other bandings are also there, like for example, uh, chromomycin A3, chromomycin. Okay, I have A3. Okay, then olivomycin, mithramycin. Different type of dyes are normally, or you can say stains, are employed during karyotype analysis. So normally here in these karyotypes are normally prepared by using standard staining procedures that will try to reveal the characteristic structural feature for each chromosome, right? And why we do this karyotyping? Because normally the cytogeneticist analyze the human karyotypes to detect some changes in the structure, to detect some change in the number of chromosomes. Like for example, karyotype can reveal changes in the chromosome number which is associated with aneuploid condition. Remember aneuploid? Previously I have discussed about the aneuploidy, right? Where there is change in the number of chromosomes. So through karyotyping, we can reveal, we can identify changes in the chromosome number which is associated with your aneuploid conditions, like your trisomy 21. What happened during trisomy 21? In trisomy 21, you have an extra 21st chromosome, and that leads to a disorder known as Down syndrome. Okay, not only you can reveal the number change in the chromosome, but also by careful analysis of karyotypes, it can also help us to study the structural changes in the chromosome, like deletions, like duplications, translocations, or inversions, right? In fact, as medical genetics, it becomes increasingly integrated with clinical medicine. Karyotypes are now becoming a source of diagnostic information about for the specific birth defects, genetic disorders, even cancers. So, with the help of karyotype analysis, we can able to identify, we can able to diagnose the information of specific birth defects, genetic disorders, or even your cancer also can be identified. Because certain type of cancer like CML, okay, I'm to erase, like CML, chronic myelogenous leukemia. This occurs between the translocation between chromosome number 9 and chromosome number 22. It occurs due to the formation of an abnormal gene product called BCR ABL gene product. Remember, chromosome 22 have a BCR region, breakpoint cluster region, and chromosome number 9 contains ABL gene, which codes for a which is a proto oncogene, right? So these type of cancers can also be diagnosed by karyotype analysis. Now, how do we prepare karyotypes from the cells? Well, karyotypes can be prepared from your mitotic cells that has been arrested in your metaphase or pro-metaphase stage of your cell cycle. Why? So first we have to take the cells. The cells has to be arrested. They has to be arrested in their metaphase stage. Okay, first we have to take the cells. We have to isolate the cells from the sample. Okay, I am writing. So you take the sample and you isolate the cells from the sample. You culture the cells in the laboratory, and then you will add certain chemicals which will arrest the cells in metaphase stage. Arrest the cells in their metaphase stage. And how you can arrest the cells in their metaphase stage? By using a chemical known as colchicine. So there is a chemical called colchicine which will help the cells to arrest in their metaphase stage. Actually, what does colchicine do? I have previously also said in the uh, somewhere in the previous videos that colchicine normally disrupt your mitotic spindle. Mitotic spindle is specially required for what? For they attach to the centromeres of the chromosomes in order to separate the chromosomes equally so that the chromosomes will equally distributed among the daughter cells during cell division. So by using the colchicine, what they do, they disrupt a spindle fiber, so the chromosomes cannot able to migrate to the opposite poles. They remain in that place, and thus it will help us to easily visualize the cells, the chromosomes at the metaphase stage. And one more important thing, that why we are wanting to see the metaphase stage of the cell cycle, because at the metaphase stage the chromosomes are more condensed in nature, because during that time the chromosome neither replicate, neither it will transcribe to form a protein. All the things has been already prepared during the G2 phase, during the S phase of the cell cycle. Remember, cell cycle consists of series of stage. One is called G1 phase, where the cell prepares their protein for replication. Then comes the S phase, where the cell replication occurred. All the chromosome chromatin material they replicated. Replication, DNA replication occurred during the S phase. Then comes the G2 phase, In G2 phase, the cell again prepares themselves so that to make the essential proteins, enzymes needed for proper cell cycle, proper cell division, and then comes the cell division phase, mitosis or meiosis, what we are wanting to do. If you are mainly interested in cell division of the gamete cells, then we have to go for meiosis. Otherwise, for somatic cells, we go for mitosis, right? So, and this metaphase occurs during the mitosis phase, during the cell division phase. So at that time the cell don't need for replication or all of them. They on the main purpose at that time of the chromosome was is to properly distribute the chromosomes equally to the daughter cells, so that each daughter cells get a full complement of the cells of the chromosome set. So we first, what we do, we culture the cells and from the sample, and then we arrest the cells in their metaphase or pro-metaphase stage, where the chromosomes assume their most condensed conformations. A variety of tissues can be used as a source of these cells. Different type of tissues can be employed as a source of our cells. Like for example, if you want to diagnose the cancer, suppose if you want to diagnose some cancer like CML, you have to take specific specimens, including the tumor biopsies. Well, what is tumor biopsies? Suppose um, you have a doubt that sample uh, which has a tumor may contain some malignant cells. So for that we take that sample, and that is called as biopsies, and then we do certain karyotype analysis of that sample to check that whether some translocations that leads to cancer or not. Or from bone marrow samples can also be taken. For other diagnoses, karyotypes are often generated from peripheral blood specimens, like from skin. If someone is if doctor have a doubt that that person is affecting have a chance of skin cancer, then sample of skin is taken and used for as biopsy report. Okay, that means that skin sample is further taken and genetic analysis is being carried out. Karyogram is prepared. Okay, and to observe, to see that whether any structural changes or numerical change, or if some translocation occur or not, that leads to cancer. Because most of the case translocation leads to cancer. Okay, I will share a video from Biotechnica, which has been shown a seminar related a webinar which shows that how translocations leads to cancer. Okay, now if you want for prenatal diagnosis, prenatal generally means to diagnose before birth the child which is going to be born, whether the child is having some abnormal chromosome number or structure of the chromosome. Before that, we go for prenatal diagnosis. Now it is a way for your doctor to see that if your developing baby have some genetically problem or not. Now there are various methods for preparation of karyotype. For prenatal diagnosis, how karyotype can be prepared because the baby has not been born. Well, there are two regions where we can take the sample to check that whether the baby has some chromosomal disorder or not that is going to be born. One process, you have studied in your class 12, amniocentesis. Amniocentesis. Well, from amniotic fluid, we take out the sample from the amniotic fluid for further karyotype testing. Now, this is the fluid that surrounds the fetus in a pregnant woman, and it protects the fetus from mechanical shock, from mechanical injury. Now, that fluid may contain certain cells from that baby. from the fetus, where we can use them and go for karyotype analysis to check whether the baby has some abnormalities or not. Another way we can go for prenatal diagnosis, that means diagnosis of the baby which is going to be born, is chorionic villus. Chorionic villus. Chorionic villus. This you have studied when you are studying about human reproduction in your class 12 syllabus. Chorionic villus is what? Chorionic villus, or plural is called chorionic villi. They are tiny, tiny projections, just like a finger like projections found in the placental tissue. Now, this chorionic villi, which looks like tiny projections of placental tissue that looks like fingers, it contains the same genetic material as contained in the fetus. And testing of this, if you take sample from the chorionic villus or from the amniotic fluid, we can able to check the baby which is going to be born if they have some abnormalities in their cell, right? So different samples can be used for karyotype analysis. You can use sample from the skin if you have doubt that that person is having skin cancer or not. Okay, well, karyotype analysis can also be done in case of some historical importance also, like for example the dead bodies of mummies, the mummification process, where they try to collect the samples and undergo for karyotype analysis. Even the ancient human beings, if some cells is observed somehow, we prepared that cells, we prepared that cells, we cultured them, and we try to use them for their karyotype analysis to check for the evolutionary role maybe. Okay, so the process of generating a karyotype begins with a short term culture of cells derived from specimens. So what we do, we take the cells from the specimen. So the specimen can be from different source, either from the bone marrow or from the skin or from the amniotic fluid for prenatal diagnosis or from the chorionic villi, different. Okay, or from the tumor sample. Okay, we take the specimen, and then what we do, we culture the cells. The cells are taken out and the cells are cultured. Cells are cultured. Then what we do, I have already said. Then after period of cell growth and multiplication, the dividing cells are arrested in their metaphase. So the cells are then arrested at their metaphase. Cells are arrested at their metaphase stage. How? How the cells are arrested at their metaphase stage? By using certain chemical called colchicine. Colchicine, you can get colchicine also in the market easily by the name of colchicine. Okay, so colchicine normally poisons the mitotic spindle. Actually, it disrupts the mitotic spindle. It breaks the microtubules, as you have studied in your first semester cell biology. That mitotic spindle are actually made up of microtubules, made up of alpha tubulin and beta tubulin. So normally, what does this colchicine do? It breaks that dimer formation between the alpha and beta tubulin, and thus eventually the mitotic spindle gets disassociated. So the cells are, the chromosomes cannot be now separate to the opposite poles. Now what happened, the next stage is the cells are now treated with a hypertonic cell solution. Cells are treated, then treated with, they are treated with a hypotonic solution. Hypotonic solution. Now, what happen if we place the cell in a hypotonic solution? If we place the cell in a hypotonic solution, what happen? In a hypotonic solution, generally the concentration of the solute with respect to the concentration of solute inside the cell is low, and reversely the concentration of the solvent within the hypotonic solution is high respect to the concentration of solute in concentration of the solvent inside the cell. So eventually the water will starts to flow inside the cell, and thus it cause the nuclei of the cell, even all the cell will become swell, and eventually we force the cells to burst open, to lyse. So when the cells are treated with hypotonic solution, it causes the nuclei, the plural form of nucleus is nuclei, to swell up. It swell up and the cells are allowed to burst open. Now the nuclei are treated with some fixative. Some fixative agents are used so that we can, for long time, we can able to study the chromosomes properly. Generally, different types of fixatives can be used, like xylene solution can be used as a fixative agents. Sometimes for temporary visualization of chromosomes we use glycerol also. Okay, and then after treatment with chemical fixative, we dropped that sample on a glass slide. We drop that sample on a glass slide. I know you, I think you know that glass slide, small rectangular piece of glass. Within that glass slide I put the sample and then treat with various stains. Now here comes the different type of staining technique that leads to chromosome banding. Different type of stains can be used for treatment of that sample, and then we will observe under microscope. Okay, the procedure of staining will be done, and then we will observe under microscope to see the karyogram, to see um, the pattern of the chromosomes within the cell. Okay, now without any treatment, if you don't treat the cells properly with some solutions, with some chemical agents, structural detail of the chromosomes are very difficult to detect under light microscope. So to make the analysis more effective, to make the analysis more efficient, the cytologists have developed different type of stains that will bind with the DNA and generate a characteristic banding pattern for different chromosomes. Okay, so different type of stains are used, like Giemsa stain, quinacrine mustard stain, then acridine orange. This is another name of a stain that I have not mentioned before. Then chromomycin A3, olivomycin, different type of stains can be employed because they will bind to specific regions of the chromosome. Okay, now, like for example, if I say about G banding, if I say the G banding technique, in G banding technique we use a stain known as Giemsa stain. Giemsa stain. Now this stain was actually developed by a famous scientist known as Gustav Giemsa. Gustav Giemsa. This stain is actually made from three different types of stains, and those three different type of stains are methylene blue, azure, and eosin. So Giemsa stain is actually a assortment of mixture of methylene blue, methylene blue, azure, azure B, I think it is say, and eosin, eosin red. So these three different stains combine it with different ratios, suitable ratios to form Giemsa stain. So in G banding, we use Giemsa staining, and it is most commonly used in North America. Metaphase chromosomes are first treated with some proteolytic enzymes before you if you use the Giemsa stain. The metaphase chromosomes are first treated with some proteolytic enzyme, like for example, they are treated with trypsin. They are treated with trypsin, which is an enzyme that will degrade the protein before the chromosomes are stained with Giemsa. Okay, normally trypsin, they actually digest, they degrade partially to some of the chromosome proteins, thereby relaxing the chromosome structure, better to say chromatin structure, and allowing the Giemsa stain to access to the DNA. Now this Giemsa stain normally, where it stains actually, at which regions of the chromosome Giemsa stain normally stains better. Generally, the heterochromatic regions, that means those regions which are tightly coiled, where chromosomes has been tightly coiled with the histone proteins, right? So the heterochromatic regions, which tends to be AT rich regions of DNA, and relatively gene poor, stains more darkly in G banding. What does it mean to say? I have said that generally those regions which are heterochromatic, those regions which are heterochromatic regions, that means tightly coiled regions of chromatin, where all the time your the nucleosomal proteins like histones with DNA has been wrapped so tightly that it coiled. It is an inactive region because at that place your enzymes required for replication, enzymes required for transcription are not accessible to that site because it's a coil region, right? So how it can access to that site and carries out the transcription or replication process? So that's why it is saying a gene poor region. Heterochromatic regions are essentially the gene poor regions. So Giemsa stain normally stains these heterochromatic regions. So by staining with Giemsa, if we see the highly stain occur in certain regions of your chromatin in your chromosome, you will observe that those regions are the heterochromatic regions, which are gene poor regions, right? They are gene poor regions, and within these heterochromatic regions, there are AT rich regions actually. Most of the case, the the nitrogenous base that are found within the heterochromatic regions are AT rich DNA that are normally stained by the G banding technique. Now in contrast, less condensed chromatin, which is called as euchromatin region, which tends to be GC rich region, they are more transcriptionally active region, where transcription will occur continuously in euchromatic region. Euchromatic region. These euchromatic regions are gene rich regions because euchromatic regions are loosely coiled chromatin regions where enzymes are accessible, they can access to this DNA for transcription, for replication, etc. So normally the euchromatic regions are mostly of GC rich. At that place This giemsa stain cannot able to stain this euchromatic region. That's why they stain as this region appears as light bands during G banding technique. So again I repeat, the giemsa stain normally stains the heterochromatic region rich with adenine thymine base. Heterochromatic regions are gene poor regions because they are highly coiled regions. No enzymes can get access to the DNA for transcription process. That's why it is called gene poor regions, and giemsa stains morely on these heterochromatic regions, whereas the euchromatic regions, which are the transcriptionally active regions, especially the GC rich regions of euchromatin, are not stained by this giemsa stain. So thus these regions appears as light bands during G banding, right? Okay. Okay, so just go through the notes, you can see the different type of stains that are being employed. Now only the giemsa stain or G banding is not only the technique to stain the chromosomes actually, right? There are also some other staining as well. Like for example, if I say the R banding technique, if I say the R banding technique, wait, if I say the R banding technique, R banding technique refers to the R means reverse. R means reverse G banding. That means in R banding, it will do the opposite of G banding. In R banding, the euchromatic regions will stain highly, whereas the heterochromatic regions will stain lightly. So, in R banding, which is used in some parts of Europe, this type of staining is used in some parts of Europe. It also involves giemsa stain. Here also we use giemsa stain in R banding technique, but the procedure will generate reverse pattern from G banding. Okay, different little bit difference there will be in the procedure during your R banding technique. Now, in R banding technique, the chromosomes are heated before the giemsa stain is applied. Okay, again I repeat, during R banding, the giemsa stain is the chromosomes, after you fix the chromosomes, you treat the chromosome with colchicine, the chromosomes are heated before giemsa stain is applied. Why we heat the chromosomes? We know that at certain temperature DNA will become denatured. Remember the melting temperature? Melting temperature is the temperature where half of the DNA helical structure is lost. So in R banding, the chromosomes are first heated at a certain temperature which will melt your DNA helix, especially the AT-rich regions will melt it first, because adenine and thymine join together by only two hydrogen bonds, so they will first get dissociate from themselves, whereas guanine cytosine are joined by three hydrogen bonds, so more probably they will remain still after him heating. So, by melting the DNA helix at AT-rich regions that usually bind to the giemsa stain more strongly, leaving only comparatively GC-rich regions to take up the stain. So, as the AT-rich regions are now become decreased due to your heating, the base pairing between the adenine thymine become decreased, hydrogen bonds have broken down, so they are remaining only the GC region, and GC rich regions are found in the euchromatin region especially, which take up the stain lightly. R banding is often used to provide critical details about the gene rich regions which are located near the telomere. So this R banding technique is normally employed especially to provide the gene rich regions. To get details about the gene rich regions where transcription is occurring all the time, especially near the telomeres, because telomeres are the end of the chromosome and they protect the ends of the chromosome, right? Somehow if the telomeres are getting deleted, then there is a possibility that the important gene segments can get hampered. To study about that gene rich regions which are located close to the telomeric regions, we go for R banding technique. There is also another method of your karyotype analysis of banding technique, and that banding known as C banding. C banding. Well, in C banding, C refers to centromere. C refers to centromere, which can be used to stain only the constitutive heterochromatin regions. What does constitutive heterochromatin means? Constitutive. This you have studied in your class 12. So you might know this term. Constitutive heterochromatin are permanently inactive regions of chromatin. That means these are those regions where permanently the chromosomes remain in condensed state. They never open. They never open to form euchromatin. Okay, so constitutive heterochromatin are the gene pore regions. These regions permanently remain inactive, and these constitutive heterochromatin are located close to the centromeric regions. So to stain this constitutive heterochromatin, we go for C banding technique. So in C banding, we stain the constitutive heterochromatin, which are permanently inactive, genetically inactive regions DNA, and it is used nowadays for diagnostic purpose nowadays. And C banding is a specialized GIMSA staining technique. Here also we use GIMSA stain, but in a different way. Just like I have said in R banding that we have hit the chromosomes before staining with GIMSA. So here also there will be some modification in the technique before applying the GIMSA stain. Okay. Now in C banding technique, it is a special form of GIMSA technique that will primarily stains the centromeric region or close to the centromeric regions, the heterochromatic regions which are found close to the centromeres, like these regions. Okay, if this is the centromere, this is your heterochromatin, constitutive heterochromatin regions. These regions are normally stained by your C banding technique. Okay. There is also another type of banding technique called as Q banding. Well, I have said the name of Q, quinacrine. Quinacrine mustard is a fluorescent dye which helps us to detect the fluorescence of where it stains, where quinacrine stains the chromosome. They will emitting a light, okay, which can be observed through fluorescence microscope. And this Q banding, it is the first banding which was actually employed. Before the development of GIMSA stain, Q banding was actually used to identify all the 46 human chromosomes, which was achieved by staining the chromosomes with quinacrine mustard and examine the chromosomes under UV light. Now, for that we have to make an additional UV light sources, and that's why there is a bit of problem to view under simple microscope. So that's why they develop fluorescence microscope. They will release a UV light and we can see through our eyepiece the staining regions, the fluorescent regions where the quinacrine has properly stained within the chromosome. Now this method of Q banding is normally useful for examining the chromosomal translocation, especially those translocation where Y chromosomes are involved, where Y chromosomes are found only in males, but sometimes chromosome abnormality also occurs, like in case of Turner syndrome. Okay, in Turner syndrome, in Klinefelter syndrome, we see. So actually translocations of the Y chromosome are especially occurring somewhere. So normally okay, so normally what I try to say that uh, normally if there is a translocation in the Y chromosome, especially if Y chromosomes are involved in translocation, then we can use this technique. It can be clearly viewed actually, and taken together, these banding techniques offer your clinical cytogeneticist as an assortment of staining methods for diagnosing chromosomal abnormalities in patients. Okay, now normally I will try to show a karyotype picture here. So let's shift to this picture. Well, this is the typical karyotype analysis that you can see. You can see assortment of chromosomes starting from chromosome number 1 up to chromosome number 23. Even the XY chromosome can also be visualized. Okay, so normally most of the bands which are given by solid black and white areas, if you see, most of the bands are given as solid black or the white areas. It has a constant morphology between the members of a homologous pair of chromosomes and between the normal individuals. So you can able to understand. Like for instance, simple. You can see the 22 chromosomes, the 22nd chromosomes. Now here only one 22nd chromosomes has been mentioned. Let us see. Okay. Now if this 22nd chromosome occur extra pair, suppose this has been taken from gamete cell, that's why we see assortment of only one set of chromosomes. Okay, and if there is a extra 22nd pair, then we can able to visualize that yes, the patient will be suffering from Turner syndrome. Okay, so if there is change in the morphology in this banding pattern, so this banding pattern is homologous with the respective homologous chromosomes, always remember. Okay, it has been shown in a single way, only one set has been shown, not the pair of homologous chromosome has been shown, individual chromosomes has been shown. I think it has been taken from the gamete cell. Karyotype analysis is done in gamete cell, that's why we see us only a single set of chromosome. Otherwise in case of somatic cell, we can see a homologous pair of chromosomes, which will make this image more complicated. But you can able to see that all those regions, the banding pattern that you can see, black white black white, okay, these regions are homologous. Okay, if some non-homologous regions are observed within the same homologous chromosome banding pattern, then you can able to identify that yes, there may be some problem in this region that leads to this type of disorder. Okay, now these chromosome bands are numbered in a unique way. Okay, when we are doing this chromosome banding pattern, when we are doing this karyotype analysis, we have to understand some of the terms, some of the things which has been actually um, done by the International System for Human Cytogenetic Nomenclature. There are some nomenclature, there are some rules to makes these bands, to observe these bands, to name these bands. Certain symbols is given, certain letter codes are given. Like the simple thing that we know that for the short arm of the chromosome we write p arm. Well, p arm refers to petite arm. Petite arm. And petite arm means small arm, whereas the long arm is represented by q. Q refers to q. Q U E U E. Q arm. Okay. Now within each arm, the regions are numbered constitutively from the centromere to the telomere. Just observe this. I'm showing you the chromosome number 3. See, the numbering has been done from the centromere up to the telomere. See the chromosome number 3 here also, 4 also. From centromere up to telomere, numbering has been done. Within each region, the second number indicates the next smaller division. Okay, like IP 1P34. If I say 1P34, what does it mean? What does it mean when we refer to as 1P34? 1P34 refers to 1 represents the chromosome number 1, P represents the small arm, and 34 represents the band number 34. Let us see, let us check. This is the number 1 chromosome that you can see at the extreme left side. So there is no 34 in the Q arm, there is 34 in this arm. Okay, it has been blurred a little bit. Some blurring has been occurred here, but this is your chromosome number 30. This is your band number 34 that you can see. Okay, so in this way chromosomes are normally numbered. The chromosomes are normally are given. Okay, now normally the number of extra chromosome, if there is an extra chromosome, suppose the number of extra chromosomes should be placed after the total number and sex chromosome. So after writing the total number of chromosome and the sex chromosome, then you should give that symbol for representing that extra chromosome with a plus sign. So a plus sign has to be given at the end, or a minus sign if there is absence of some segment or absence of entire chromosome from the chromosome set. Like for example, if I say 47 comma XX represents female plus 21, what does it mean? It remains that it means that it is the karyotype of a female, that's why we write XX. 47 chromosomes are there, that means instead of 46 one extra chromosome is there, and that extra chromosome is your 21st chromosome. Again I repeat, XX represents that it is the karyotype of a female. 47 means there is an extra chromosome, but what extra chromosome is there? I have written plus 21, which means they have an extra 21 chromosome, 21st chromosome, right? Okay, a plus or minus sign is placed following a chromosome symbol to signify increase or decrease in any arm length. Now if I in the superscript, if I give a plus sign or minus sign followed by a chromosome symbol, that is the Q arm or the P arm, it only signifies that there must be increase in the length of the arm of the chromosome or decrease. Like for example, if I say if I say 46 xy 1q plus, what does it mean? 46 means normal 46 chromosome is there, xy represents this is the karyotype of a male, but 1q1 plus means, that means within the chromosome number 1, the long arm of the chromosome number 1, that is the q arm, have an extra segment, that is your maybe a duplication, maybe a translocation. You have to check them, that where there is minus, that if there is translocation or not. Okay, I think you have understood. 1q plus, what does it mean? 1 refers to the chromosome number 1, q refers to the long arm of the chromosome number 1 having a plus symbol, that means having an extra segment. So in this way karyotype analysis is carried out. So I think I have to leave the lecture now. So just go through the lectures, just go through the notes that I have provided to you. I think you can able to do, you can able to understand what I have said till now. Just remember these words that I have mentioned with you, that I have shared with you. And if you have any problems, any doubts, you can answer me. You can ask me in your WhatsApp group that normally I have created. So thank you for all.